Massive No Kings protests sweep New York City. So, tens of thousands of lefty, anti-white No Kings protesters took to the streets of New York and across the country Saturday. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. Trying to play this down some, it looks like. God. Mordecai Vanunu. Do you know who that is? Have you been forced to sit through numerous speeches? How useful is that? And this happened a day of defiance against President Trump as the U.S. Army had its 250th anniversary military parade in Washington, D.C. There were no indications of significant violence or arrests at the Big Apple. Really? Lying. Where demonstrators, and it's true though, earlier in the day there was less or fewer disruptions and lawlessness, and then there was more later in the day, but you'll have to check it out for yourself. Demonstrations began around noon in Queens and later in Brooklyn and Manhattan, where 50,000 showed up, police sources said. Now, this is what's going to defeat you as soon as Donald Trump is done. And this is probably going to be undermining Donald Trump while he's in office moving forward. Who's financing this? Well, we talked about Christie, little Christie Walton, and how she's dumping big money and $20 billion to her name of net worth. Doesn't undermine her net worth at all. Has less than, I think, 2% interest actually in Walmart. You know who else is financing? Recently uncovered? China.
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 China. China. China. China.
China.
China. China. China.
Do you remember when all the multiracial anti-Jew-spurgs went crazy? When we started talking about, of course, communist China would fund anti-whiteism. Look at what it does to the United States. Look at what it does to Britain. Is Britain or the United States stronger with more anti-whiteism? Objectively, no. Is it weaker? Yes. In geopolitics, all countries must be endeavoring at all times to undermine all other countries. Its allies, a little bit less. Neutrals and foes, a lot. China is a foe. Every second of every day, Chinese geopolitical strategists have to concern themselves, and do concern themselves, with every conceivable way to weaken the United States, to weaken the UK, to weaken Canada. Every single day. Anti-whiteism weakens America, weakens Canada, weakens the UK and the rest. So we don't have to even have recourse to proof to know that it's happening, because it must happen. That's how intelligence works. Now, if you are short of genius, then just say, yes, sir, and do the right thing. You know, one of the things, we're talking about Robert E. Lee, his name is supposed to be returned to the base that it was taken off of. But one of the things that made Robert E. Lee, in fact, maybe the greatest thing, or at least tantamount, that made Robert E. Lee so great, was all of the men that knew they weren't his peer that said, yes, sir. The other half of what made him great was inside of him. What our biospirit was manifesting through that great man. Half of it was the biospirit manifested through Robert E. Lee. The other half were all of the guys and women who realized they weren't his equal, and so they said, "Yes, sir." I just came out because I see a lot of things happening in the country that are really scary. Lisa Dula, 53, who lives in Jersey City, lives in Jersey. You live in Jersey City? How long are your fingernails? If they're not 6 inches, you're not even from Jersey. The Post from Bryant Park. In terms of sending military out against civilians, people getting picked up by masked, unidentified law enforcement. And so, I mean, maybe you all have seen the individual, like the guy, one of the people who were dropping off the several $100 masks and shields and everything. The guy is in which big union is he in? Teamsters. He's in the Teamsters, and he's in a pro-Hispanic, like racially Hispanic supremacy entity, organization as well. The news is coming out. Check it out for yourself. Maybe I'm wrong. And then, of course, you have all of these white females on these different platforms who are now suddenly attracted to this guy because he's dark featured, just like Luigi Mangione. Unbelievable. They're like, he's dark. I love it. This is an enemy of their essence, the essence of these white women. So they're finding these people. This is the machinery of anti-whiteism behind the scenes, in the shadows. The gears are turning. The money is flowing from people like Christie, from these multiple entities that ultimately receive their funding from China, the Chinese Communist Party. And you watch, some defender of China will show up. They're always listening. There is a one in Mark's audience all the time, an agent of China. And if you say anything negative about China, the Chinese agent immediately starts bad-mouthing you. But he gives Mark a couple of pounds here and there, so he's allowed to stay. You start defending China here, you're gone. Gone. Banned. So, while the United States, we had here a tale of two cities, a tale of two forces, a tale of two entities yesterday, didn't we? Did you notice it? Did you keep your eyes open? Did you see what was happening? A tale of two cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of time. It literally is not the best of times. When we boil down the juxtaposition between what's supposed to be the patriotic America through the venue and vehicle of the 250th anniversary of the Army, we juxtaposition that with the hundreds of thousands of anti-whites marching across the United States. We see the blackest and sickest defeat of the West. There is nothing good to pull out of that comparison. Across the country, yesterday, shots were fired, fists were thrown. Satanic anti-white monsters roamed the streets and made infinite declarations of warfare on Western kind and Western civilization. It's not just their votes, it's their threats, it's their energy, it's their threats to murder any in their own circles who vary from the anti-white line. And we saw the consequences, the reality of it. They're not joking. We saw people get shot in Utah, of all places. We saw people getting trampled, people getting beat up, crazy people in Philadelphia bringing snakes to the rally. Your vote is not going to matter in the future. They're going to have the districts. They're going to have the voting power. They're going to have the congressmen and women as a consequence of the influx of these people from all around the world. They'll be voting for more of the defining line between the United States and the world to be white erased, because that is going to injure Western kind and our creation, America. My cuck friends, it's not going to matter that it's also going to injure the anti-whites. Stop scratching your vacuous heads, wondering, why would they do that to themselves too? The reason is because they are focused on victimizing white people and our creations. That's why. It's not about their economic improvement or stability, civility, investments. It's not about any of that. Stop pretending that it is. Acknowledge the reality. They're here for your blood. They're here for your tears. They're here for your homes. They're here for your lives. They're here for your history. They're here for your Supreme Court and all of your other courts. They're here for your LA, a la Karen Bass, and how many of the other state level legislators and city legislators that were chanting, "This is ours now." They don't care that it's going to hurt them economically. Stop making the argument. Stop being a coward. Open your eyes. Stop following the crowders. Stop following these people if this is the direction they're going to lead you. Christy Walton, China funding, and here are these people, as I mentioned at the beginning of our gathering today. Here they are having zero shame, as they always have, having a No King's Day, an argument made by the founding fathers with a Declaration of Independence that killed the idea of the divine right of kings. The death of the idea of the divine right of kings to rule is owed to white men. That's why it died on planet Earth. In my opinion, of course. Check it out with CNN. Everybody knows this, and yet the anti-whites, no problem. No kings. No kings, not in America, where the founding fathers said no kings with their Declaration of Independence. They will use anything, including contradictory, 100% contradictory arguments to arrive at anti-white conclusions. So while they marched and flexed massive muscles across the West, what happened in the other city, in this tale of two cities, really 1,800 cities to one? There is the news, the reportage on these Chinese entities that I can show to you maybe on Wednesday. The reportage on these Chinese-backed entities. And anything that's backed by Chinese entities is the Chinese government. That's the reality. Communist government, they control everything in the final analysis. But the reportage and the research is being done. And as I say, you don't even have to see it happening to know that it must happen. But while that is happening across America, financed from ne'er-do-wells of various types, and just on that point for a moment, surely there are going to be anti-white Jews putting money behind this anti-white terror that they've initiated in LA and now sweeping the United States. Surely there will be. But there are also the anti-white Christy Waltons. There are also the anti-white communist Chinese government. There are also anti-white Hispanics, like this Hispanic supremacist organization that this guy is a member of, photo of him in like their yearbook. Same guy passing out all of the masks, multiple $100 masks to the anti-white terrorists. So if you care about white people, if you want to stop our victimization, from our perspective, in the fort of the West, what is the common thread of all of that? What's the common thread? The anti-whiteism. That's the common thread. Financiers from all backgrounds, anti-whites of all backgrounds, are financing the anti-white terror that was initiated in LA the other day. The only sensible way to proceed is to address anti-whiteism. But while this is happening, we've got in the other city, to juxtaposition it with, this flexing of muscle. Supposed to be massive flex, 250 years. A little bit misleading in their reportage. Ultimately, primarily Fox News there, making it sound like, yes, the Army did predate the official documents of the country, but the Army did not predate the creation of the country. Just the official documents. There wouldn't have been an army to fight for anything if the idea had not already been instantiated. Now you just watch. As I heard them say this repeatedly on Fox, all I could think is of the midwits coming out saying, oh, you see, you need violence first, then you can have. Watch, mark my words. In a big way, this birthday for the Army ended up being a promotion, a commercial to get young men primarily to enlist in the armed forces, which of course is an appeal to this very honorable, very powerful element dignified in the white race, to our males, to stand up and fight for the tribe, even potentially sacrifice our own genes so that maybe they won't be passed on for the tribe. There can be nothing more beautiful than that. Quite honestly, nothing is more beautiful. A couple of times when I was watching, I will tell you this, the only good parts of this juxtaposition, the only good parts were when they had people read quotes from actual war heroes over the history of the United States Army. And I can imagine that plenty other men did as well. And I know that women looked on like, why are you crying? Why did you just cough like really hard and have tears streaming down your face? Well, because they just shared that quote, and I can't remember the general's name in World War II, for example. They shared many quotes where the general said, the Nazis have surrounded us again. Poor bastards. Women, I'm sorry, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get why in a man. There's nothing more beautiful. Our men should be celebrated as the embodiment of the heroic, angelic, not just paradigm but paragon. To always, above all things and all else, for everyone to look to and admire as the greatest human emotion and action that there could be out of a human being. That desire to immediately want to stand with one's brothers at the risk of genetic death for the tribe, that exists in us, or at least our healthy members. There's nothing like it. So when they were reading these quotes from these generals, I had tears coming out of my eyes. Locked jaw and tears coming out of my eyes. That's what a real man is. That's why I'm here doing this. That's why I strive in the light with glory in my battle with anti-whiteism. That's why I only use the tools that work. That's why we get rid of everything that fails. The rest of the parade was both a recruiting commercial and pussified. I mean, folks, there were girls everywhere. And not only were there girls everywhere in the army, but there were girly guys everywhere. There wasn't a shred. Even the Abrams tanks looked effeminate as a consequence. This could have been actually and should have been actually manly. Every step of the way. Nothing, not one element of it, feminine or soft or nice. Not one element. This is the army, for God's sake. One of the other quotes, General George Washington said to one of his commanders, can you climb this hill with unloaded muskets and then do hand-to-hand combat with the redcoats and do this in the middle of the night? Sneak up on them in the middle of the night, unloaded muskets. It's all going to be bayonet combat, hand-to-hand. And this guy, so death. And this guy simply said, General, give me the order. It is so despicable that we handle women. We handle females, let's say, not women. We handle females like they're special. No, my friends, that is special. That is special. Females thinking all about themselves all the time. All about themselves. That, my friends, is special. There is nothing like that. It is inimitable. It is priceless. And that's the masculinity that should have been on display, but is gone. White erased, even from the army. That is the tale of two cities, or the tale of 2,000 on one side and one on the other. The resistance to all of this that we watched across the United States was this effete, smiling, mildly, most of them mildly out of shape, many of them quite little people. I mean, little people. I don't care if their only job is to sit in a blackened room and press buttons. I don't care if their only job is to deliver the food to the front lines. On parade day for the military, everybody looks like they're Schwarzenegger. Everybody is as masculine. Everybody is as robust. Everybody is as stern. Everybody is as fierce. This isn't camp, bitches. This is supposed to be the United States Army. They talked about what are their paratroopers called that they had fly in? The Golden Knights. They reminded me more of the Power Rangers. They even had pathetic looking cannons. I mean, the whole thing was an embarrassment. They showed commercials of little girls, and I mean little, muscleless, non-white, on top of that, girls who are Army Rangers. These guys are supposed to be brutal, killing monsters. You have little girls. We see what happens all the time with the little girls in police uniforms. I just saw one last night where the guy comes walking out of his house with a hammer, and she's like 20 yards away, and she's like, "Could you put that down? Would you put that down?" And then she radios for backup. He starts running. She's taking out her firearm and screaming at the top of her lungs, and gets off like 10 shots. They all must have missed. Days before that, another one where the criminal, and this guy was emaciated, another emaciated criminal just takes the gun right away from her. And then she's begging, "Don't shoot me," and screaming. That can't be our Army Rangers. No one's coming to help them. We saw them marching. These groups of summer camp marchers, where you'd have like one tall guy on the end, all gangly, and then it would slope down to like a 5-foot tall woman. This is pathetic. So what do we actually have in this Tale of Two Cities? They're identical. Both are anti-white. One just clads itself in flags and makes a pretense to the founding of America and the old masculinity, the masculinity of the white race. The other hates it all. They're both anti-white. The 2,000 cities marching with inverted American flags and El Salvadorian and Mexican flags and Venezuelan flags and so many others. Anti-whiteism on display there. And then the United States military, anti-whiteism on display there. Apparently, Trump said that he wanted, after witnessing a military parade or several abroad, he wanted to have a really badass military parade in the States. Well, this was nowhere close to that. I can't even believe how pathetic it was. But it gets worse, because they followed the United States Army from its beginning to its present. And when they got to the period when the southern states seceded from the United States and formed a new country called the Confederate States of America, and then the United States invaded that country, my opinion, do the reading for yourself. When they got to that point, they had what they referred to as the Union reenactors, the United States soldier reenactors. They marched, and about 40% of them were black. At least that's the way it looked to me. And I tweeted about it. I wrote, the screen was small, but it looked to me like the Union reenactors were at least 40% non-white. Mark my words. As we in our history continue to be white erased, the history of the Civil War will reflect blacks largely liberating themselves from the evil of the white Southerner. I made this prediction decades back in these history preservation groups, in pro-Southern groups. I told them all, They're going to rewrite everything. And over the years, we've watched the role played by blacks in the liberating of black slaves. And this is, of course, per the story in the Civil War, which it was actually not. It was a war for Southern independence, has grown. That role of black people in the liberating of black slaves has grown by the year. And this was a great example of it. It's not all these white guys who were at war with all of these white guys. As I shouted at one of my teachers back in junior high school, I was already in disagreement about the war being over slavery. And one of the biggest reasons that I could see was that the first battlefield, a large chunk of it was owned by a free black family in Virginia. But I ended up saying to her, okay, if this war was actually about slavery, then hundreds of thousands of white men died to free blacks. So shouldn't we be celebrating these white men for doing that instead of condemning white men? But of course we shouldn't, because we're inside the anti-white narrative. So the black race was liberated from the evil of slavery, which was conducted and carried out by evil white people. The liberators don't matter since they're white, but over time, they're becoming blacker by the day. And now the liberators are mattering more and more. Really not much more to say. If we don't recapture our destiny, the war for Southern independence will end up being the black race rose up and defeated the white race and broke the shackles of slavery. That'll be what the children are taught. And it won't matter what your history book says. It won't matter if you think it's illogical. None of that'll matter. There'll be white people in the United States will have played a small role in assisting blacks to liberate themselves. That'll end up being the history. And cucks out there will be dealing with anti-whites on the left, making that argument. And the cucks will be trying to deal with it by saying, no, I think there was a president called Lincoln, and he was talking about, and they'll be saying, shut up, Nazi. Shut up, Nazi. Shut up, racist. And then they'll say, the guys will say, I'm not racist. My wife has non-white boyfriends, even while we're married. Maybe the only thing that was good about the parade yesterday was, I got to tell you, I was so sick of the whole thing. All of these females in these coveted roles, these coveted positions. Why would a white male looking at the Rangers think, yeah, I want to go be a Ranger? Why would a white male think, I want to go be a Green Beret? Look at the 5'5" little girl. I want to be just like her. No, our men are not genetically equipped to follow women. We're not genetically equipped to submit to the authority and follow and love as an authority figure women. We're genetically equipped to breed them. That's what we're genetically equipped to do. So when I see a female in these roles, I think I want nothing to do with it. Could you imagine being in a role like this? Like you're a badass. You're going to go join the 82nd Airborne. You're going to go join the cavalry. You're going to go join. You want to get in the Green Berets. And then you get to see this little girl. Nah. Probably the only good thing was that, what's his name? Greenwald? The guy who sings Proud to be American. That was, his voice is still good. I mean, he was just singing. It was raw microphone, it sounded like to me. So I don't know. How old is that guy? He still sounded good.